Should we hit the button?
What do you mean by that?
Give me a fucking break, buddy.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
So no top 5, huh?
No top 5. You know,
I'm mad.
you're mad at me?
It's beef time.
It's beef time. You trying to get some vengeance on me? Our movie this week was Vengeance,
Man.
directed by B.J. Novak.
BJ Novak. And he wrote it, right?
I think so, and he starred in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's his directorial debut.
Yeah. I believe so. This shit was great.
I had a lot of fun with it.
This shit was really good. And then I got to, at the end, after it, I was like, this shit is so good. And then I was like, wait, this might be just, this might be more up my alley than maybe everybody's. But
Yeah, I was at first I started it, and I didn't know if it was going to be the movie this week. And then I got to a certain point, I was like, no, this has to be the movie of the week. It just like reminded me of too many things that feel movie clubby.
yeah, I mean,
Like I don't know, it felt like a little bit like Red Rocket mixed with like other things. Maybe that was just like the Texasness.
it reminded me a lot of Kid Detective.
That too.
Kid Detective. Yeah, this movie was really fucking good if you ask me. This movie nailed everything for me. Like, this movie was perfect for me. Like, you really, like, I also didn't know what was going on. Like, I didn't know what the plot of it was. I heard it talked about, but I don't really remember, like, what the actual plot was.
So just for our listeners, the plot is B.J. Novak is a writer for the New Yorker. He's kind of in a writer's slump, and he's like seeing a lot of people. And then someone that he hooks up with passes away, and he finds out, and he gets dragged into going to the funeral, and then he finds that there's a kind of a story there, and so he starts making the story, and it's him trying to figure out like the death, how the person that he was with died, and it turns
Turns into a podcast.
turns into a podcast and kind of goes a lot of different directions after that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about like him finding out who he is, but also like there's some interesting points made about America.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really kind of like interesting the way they do it. Like, the way they shot it and edited it, like, it was very interesting because, yeah, it's like he was trying to pitch a podcast at first, and then gets dragged in this funeral out of nowhere, and then it turns into the brother just being like, yo, we got to go kill this guy. And you're like, wait, what movie is this about to be?
yeah.
And then, like, he gets that idea for the podcast of, like, yo, like, I'm gonna, like, explore, like, why people, like, want to blame shit on everybody else. And, like,
Yeah.
because he just thought that brother was just, like, wanting to blame people on the death of his sister. And it turns into this crazy story, and it just changes tone so well.
Oh,
like,
definitely.
very well throughout this whole movie. Like, it goes from funny to, like, just these really, like, deep moments. And
heartwarming moments.
yeah, oh yeah, a lot of heartwarming moments. But the script, man, like, he really nailed it. Like, just so many, like, things that were said in this movie, so many different moments. It was just like, wow, like, this shit is, it felt like this real, like, fun story, but then there's, like, so much, like, depth hidden in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That it is, like, this giant metaphor at the same time while being, like, this fun, entertaining story. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a lot of like cool things going on too, and you're right. The tone felt nice. There's something about like indie movies or like indie-esque movies that have this like low intensity feel, but also like philosophical, and like inter perspective.
Yeah. But I like when they raise the stakes like this.
Yeah,
one.
and the
This
stakes get
one-
raised. It never feels like quite like the level of like a John Wick or like a Mission
Yeah.
Impossible type thing or like Knives Out.
Yeah.
But like it does get like you're like, what is going on here?
Side thing. Have you ever seen Under the Silver Lake with Andrew Garfield?
Yeah.
That one's kind of like a crazy indie, like one of those like fast paced kind of like
What's going on here?
yeah, it's kind of similar to this in a sense.
That
like,
movie is really underrated.
Yeah, I've watched it one time and I kind of half watched it. I was like, I don't know, just not fully into it and not like didn't like the movie. I like needed to just like I want to rewatch it. Is what I'm saying.
No, definitely. We could put it on the list.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
But there's so many great moments in this, and like it is more of like an examination on like white privileged podcasting and like content making, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or just like I don't know, because like you go.
Yeah, the ending message of it really like sticks that landing, but it kind of goes through a ride before it gets there too, which is
because like
interesting.
his whole perspective is like, how can I make this a story? Like, how can I like turn this into a story? And like I don't know, they both have the line too. They're like, oh, like white woman death, like that. You've hit the gold mine.
Yeah.
But like there's so many interesting characters and like hilarious, heartwarming moments. Like when the little brother like walks in with the jammed gun and he's like, "Can you fix my jammed gun?"
Yeah, pointing it at him.
We should call you El Stupido.
And he's like, "Can I sleep on the floor?"
Yeah,
and he's like,
"Aw."
"Yeah."
And that's nice.
Yeah. And then the video later where where the girl is talking about how her little brother sleeps on the floor because he's scared of ghosts.
Yeah, and he puts it all together.
Yeah.
That's nice. I also love the scene where he's like, "What do you guys think of Texas? Like, what about Texas?" He's like, "We got a Whataburger." And he's like, "And what do you think about Whataburger? We can go right now."
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you order from Whataburger? Well, you can order anything, then. Anything you want.
And there's a great cast.
Yeah.
I love the John Mayer cameo. I had seen that clip, and I thought it was John Mayer being, like, for real. Like, I saw that on, like, TikTok or Instagram, and I thought that was, like a real recorded moment of John Mayer. I didn't realize that was from a movie where he's like, yeah, like, I'm dating, like, 6 or 7 girls
You
right
thought
now,
that
but
was for real?
I sometimes think about, like, settling down, like, what that would be like.
Yeah, with, like, 2 or 3.
Yeah. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that was funny. And then when I started that, I was like, wait, what movie am I watching? I'm like, wait, okay, so he's in LA and he's like a writer or something, and then
Yeah.
and I was like, wait, what is going on? How does he end up in Texas? And then I was just thinking, I'm like, why the fuck would he go to this funeral? That was my biggest question at first. But then it starts like, then once it takes off, once the brother starts like going crazy, like after taking him from the funeral,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I get what's going on now. But I was like, why would he even go to this?
Well, I think he also like felt bad. He was like, damn. Like,
Yeah.
I was important to this person, and she was not important to me at all.
Yeah,
I feel like terrible. I should go like make some closure with that.
but plot twist.
Plot twist. Plot
You
twist
know,
indeed.
I was texting someone too about how I was watching this movie, and they were like, "How do you like the movie?" And I was like, "It's really good so far." I'm like, "I actually love it," and they're like, "What if it just takes a twist and like you don't fuck with it?" And I was like, "It actually just took a twist right now, but it's not for the bad."
Yeah.
And then I texted and I was like, "Wait, it just twisted again, but it's amazing."
Well, you texted me and you were like, if this person is responsible for the murder, the movie's ruined.
Yeah, so the second the party started, not to like jump towards the end or anything, I won't even get too descriptive yet, even though we are gonna spoil some shit. But
Spoilers ahead.
yeah, but the second they started walking, the second he walked up, I was like, "Hey, friend, I really like you." I was like, "You had a great scene earlier. Like that was a good scene."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Fuck, they made me like you."
Yep.
I was like, "They made me really like you."
He was
And now you're here.
And like he was the only person that was nice to him, like besides the family.
Yeah, because even in that moment, he was like, "Oh, hey, I do have a friend here."
Yep.
Like, oh, man.
And he had I loved Ashton Kutcher's character. He had some great, like, I don't know, some great insights and points.
Yeah.
And, like, obviously he's trying to make great insights
Dude,
and
he
points.
played that character well. Like, to give him credit, at first, you're like, all right, Ashton Kutcher, man, what are you doing in the suit? Like, why did they make him, like, the overly Texas, like, like, kind of like playboy almost,
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, he's fucking nailing this part. Like,
he is.
like
nailing the part.
he seems out of Ashton Kutcher at this point. Like,
Yeah. I liked his point where he was like, or like the line where he was like, all these people just have so much energy and they don't know where to put it.
yeah.
And I felt like that was
that's
like
very
a really
Midwesty too. You know what I mean? Or just any, he was really referring to anybody not in a major city. Like
Yeah, that rang true to me in some ways. There was a lot of things that rang true to me in terms of like the people often bring up about America, like the difference between rural and urban, and I felt like this movie like dived into that a lot.
Yeah.
And they made a really good point too, where they were like, if you would get like hurt in New York or wherever,
Yeah, who's gonna come?
Who's gonna come to your hospital for you?
Yeah.
You
And
got a
he's
whole-
like, well, I wouldn't have a car in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
But no, I thought it was fucking great at the party later when those two guys came up and they were like, hey, University of Texas, or
Yeah, they were like, hey, Longhorn fan.
yeah, hey, Longhorn fan. They're like, how'd you like what we did to your car? And he was like, you did that over football?
Yeah. They're also like, what do you think of Texas University? He's like, I know they have a good film program. I think Richard Linklater went there. And he's like, what do you think about Texas Tech?
Matt Bernard,
The quarterback.
Yeah.
The crowd goes crazy.
Yeah. I thought that was, there was so many good moments like that.
Yeah, and like I loved when he was like moving in. He had like all his like fancy like coffee cooking stuff and like his own little self care device. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Had to have that all shit down.
Yes, girl. How do you like your coffee? In my mouth.
Oh, that was great. Oh, and Issa Rae was great too.
Yeah, she was great. She was and that's what I was getting to earlier. I think the way they edited this was brilliant. Like the way they intertwined the podcasting with it, I think was really great. Like a lot of people have tried to like, use podcasting as like a theme in like movies and shows and shit. But this movie kind of felt like if you were to listen to this, it would be really good.
Yeah.
Like you would get
podcast?
this movie. Like if you just listen to the whole movie, like even a lot of the segments were like fast and kind of podcasty anyway. Like it wasn't entirely like that, but like I don't know. I feel like you really would just get the vibe of this whole movie by listening to it, and I think that was kind of inspiring to me a little bit of just like, oh wow, like I've never really, I know a lot of people are like diving into like the narrative based podcasts and like story based. I know like Seth Rogen does that a little bit, or like
Kinda.
I think a few other people are trying that too. But
The one thing I think that it authentically nailed about that style of podcasting is the element that like by the end of your investigation, like you have a completely different endpoint than you expected. Like there's a few like S-Town, and like the sequel to S-Town.
Dead White Girls, what it was called.
Dead White Girls. But like there is this element of like oftentimes, or like at least the ones that I like the most, like they go in thinking they're finding one thing. S-Town is the podcast that reminds me of this show the most. Like it feels like if he were actually making a podcast, it would be S-Town.
You kind of get hooked into one thing and then you learn something completely different.
Yeah, and then like at least the best ones are honest about that. But what I thought was interesting about this movie is that like for a lot of it, he's like, wow, this is a great story. This is a great story. This is a great story. Like I'm getting so many good details. Yeah. And it's like because people are setting it up for you to have a great story. Like he's only seeing like what he wants to see, and he like kind of misses the fact that like he's been getting fed this myth to like tell this myth about this person, and it like is so perfect because like they're designing it to be perfect. But like the real interesting story is the truth in the end. And like the real interesting part is him realizing the truth.
There's a lot to this movie.
Yeah, because I mean, like everybody keeps saying the same thing over and over to him. Like she wouldn't touch an Advil. Yeah. Even the police officers. I love the moment where he calls Issa Rae after talking to the police officer. And he's like, "Yes, the law enforcement weren't helpful at all." She's like, "You're just now realizing you went all the way down to Texas."
But they talked about those two cops for like a long time.
Yeah.
And then the scene when you finally get to them, you're like, oh, these fucking guys. And they nail their scene. And they flip the whole script on him. Like,
you're starting to be a little suspicious here, aren't you?
Yeah, they're like, 90% of the time it's the boyfriend. And they're like, wait, so you weren't the boyfriend? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, there was so many, like, he's a great writer. That's what I walked away with this. Like, the way he, like, the way he just used comedy too, like callbacks in this movie, like callbacks work, I think, for like any genre, like really well. And the way he just like pieces little things together and then brings it up later, I don't know. There was just something.
Well, like, like every night scene, he usually tries to do the cell phone one more time, like unlock it.
Yeah.
And then like finally getting the payoff for like why she.
Yeah.
Like puts it together.
Yeah.
That was a great. Like even the Advil joke was kind of great.
Yeah.
Or like reference. And I love that like, like he finally, literally and like figuratively like embraces the like ways of like the people that he's staying with and like the Texas attitude. Like
Yeah.
puts on the cowboy hats and the boots, and then like he handles it like how they would handle it.
Yeah.
I also like there was something to be said about like Ashton Kutcher's character's like awareness in the tent, and he's like, you know how this will work. Like it comes out, people think I'm the villain for like a week, they hate me, but then they think I have some stuff to say, and
Yeah.
then I'm not so canceled.
I know that's like where the whole movie like changes again for me, where it's like, holy shit, this is just so insane. I don't know, like, God, I'm sorry,
No,
losing words, but like it really was like jaw dropping seeing like that happen, like, you know, and the way he just like flipped the scripts and just makes the message of the movie completely change, and you're like, wait. I don't know. It's like it's just like, what is the outcome of this? And then for it to be him getting fucking shot in the head is like a whole nother element of like, oh my God.
yeah. Well, like, yeah, and like for him to tuck in like the opioid epidemic in the way that he did was really interesting. And like the sad fact is like unless they would have like made up all of these like kind of lies about her, like no one would have cared about her death. Do you know what I mean? Like it should have been brushed over by everybody. Like and nobody gets held responsible. Like I think in some ways like Ashton Kutcher's character like represented like more than just like him, like he was like kind of like big pharma and like you know like the powers that be that know like that you can make a ton of money off pharmaceuticals and like even though it kills people like you're still making the money and like the people are still partying and like life goes on.
Yeah, the after party.
The after party. And I thought that was really great, like in terms of ending.
That's the episode title.
And like that's a good episode title. He also like you know he deletes everything. I think like part of it like he realizes that he's like monetizing or like profiting off like somebody's misfortune.
Yeah, I mean, he pointed that out too. That's what makes like that Ashton Kutcher speech so insane too. Like, you know, on top of already like going through like what he had gone through with the family and shit too, and then like I don't know, even just like you know there was like that point where Issa Rae was like, "Yo, we got it," and he's like still attached to it. You know, I don't know. You know, you know him realizing. I don't know. Even I think it was Ashton Kutcher that brought it up. Just the fact of like, yo, like you didn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like it was that point where he really realized that too, where it's like, you know, he's like, you know, you came here and you started watching videos. And you started looking at pictures. You know what I mean? And you got all these characters around you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
No, it was. I thought it was a great point to be made about it, and a point to be made about like those type of people in general.
Yeah.
Where it's like they check all of like the right boxes. They're like anti this, pro this, but it's like, what is he really doing there? Like, is he actually trying to be helpful, or is he just trying to like tell the story? And then like, you know, in terms of like consumers, is this like the type of thing that we're looking for? Like listening, like we don't even really care. Like if the podcast is real or not, like if it seems real and like tells the stories that we want to hear,
That was interesting too with the Issa part of just being like, you know, this is better.
Yeah.
Like not having the ending is better, and I was like, yo,
It's like not even about the truth. It's about like
yeah, that kind of fucked me up for a second, thinking like, oh my God, like I hate thinking about like big corporations and like for creative shit specifically of like having like calling about your idea and talking to a group of 20 people, you know what I mean, on a speakerphone. Thanks, guys. You know, like.
And it feels so weird because, like, you know, like with movies or music, like telling like myths and fables is like one thing, but then like where it's like supposed to be nonfiction and like supposed to be real, but like they're like manipulating a way to like make it. I don't know. It's interesting like that the movie dives into like the stories we tell. Not just like podcasts, but like the stories we tell about people and like our friends and family and like how we frame where we're from and like who we are, and like the lies that sort of help us get through life, but also like, I don't know, people deserve like the best version of their story being told.
Yeah. How like did it fuck you up whenever he unlocked that phone and started seeing those pen texts? Like, what was that like for you?
I was like,
'Cause-
I was like, oh my gosh.
I
she's
think my
involved with the
jaw
cartel.
dropped. Like, literally. I was just like, and then it stayed that way throughout the whole fucking thing. You know, like,
Well, because I was like, oh my gosh, maybe she is with like the cartel.
yeah,
And I was like, maybe his car did get blown up because of
Yeah.
the cartel. And like all of these other like, your mind just starts racing.
I know the way that movie sends you down so many different trails is pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was a satisfying wrap up too.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a satisfying moment too, where they're just at the fucking Whataburger, and the grandma's like, "Oh, too bad she was a pill popper." It was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were about to say the ending where they're at the Whataburger and the cops are like, Quentin. I didn't figure him for a gun accident type.
Yeah, they were like, they're like, oh man, they're on a Friday, like
Yeah.
we were about to get Whataburger.
Yeah. The cops just did not care at all. The dude just, and then it just shows him sitting there, and he's like that. That's just so crazy. He's just like, yeah, I just got away with murder. Like,
Well, I mean, like he puts it all together. He's like, you put this place in like the intersection of 4 counties, like no one's gonna claim it.
yeah,
It's like your thing that's getting away with, helping you get away with all this is also gonna be your downfall. And I just loved that the little scene with the other sheriff. He's like, well, technically it's under policy that we don't discuss open cases. He's like, well, I'm with a podcast. Oh, well, that.
and then it jump skips to like him like breaking down everything, going through evidence. And but then he's like, but really, you should be talking to Highway Patrol, and then it does the jump cut of Highway Patrol sending to fucking Border Patrol sending to this, and one of them being like, oh, them army bastards over there, and then it skips to them, and he's like, you tell them, like turn into a fucking drill sergeant and
Yeah.
shit.
And it's just interesting in general. Like the second you find out that it was like an actual overdose, right? Like everyone's instant blame is on the person who overdosed, which I definitely understand. But like no one stops for a second and thinks like, well, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Like how is this allowed?
Well, dude, I mean, yeah, that's like
Not
That's like-
allowed, but like like I mean like
that's a whole nother story. You know what I mean? Like to get real, like that's real life right there. You know what I mean? Like people like I think about that a lot. Knives Out made me think about that, but like I've lost people too. You know what I mean? And like
same.
that shit is like, there's just nothing to be done about it. Like
No,
I don't know. Like
it's like
in my experience, it's like you can even know who did it. You can even know who like was responsible for it or who supplied it, and it like that shit don't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That like
it's like with the Mac Miller stuff.
yeah, just like the Texas people. It's like what am I gonna tell a cop for? You know what I mean? Like what are they? Like what's gonna happen? Like
Yeah. It's not bringing the person.
that's like
back.
real as hell too.
Yeah.
Just in life and me bringing up Knives Out just made me think like how much shit is like disguised as an overdose. Not like Knives Out was like that, but there was just the mixture of it all and got me thinking about it and like how much shit is disguised as an overdose. Side note, did you hear that? Do you remember that story a few months ago? That girl in St. Louis that like 3 days before this like old man passed away from an overdose, like she got put on his will out of nowhere.
I kind of remember that. Yeah.
And it was like this huge like Facebook thing. And yeah, and like all this shit started leaking and she like had like videos from like right then being like, I don't know this man. Like she took it like in his house. She's like, I just been staying here for a day or two. Like it was just so much weird shit and
Just remind you of that.
yeah, like all that combined like had me thinking I'm like, man, how much murders have actually happened like because of just overdose, you
Well,
know?
I mean, like it's a really because I mean, the thing that's a little bit alarming about like murder, not alarming, but like a lot of them go unsolved for like a little bit. I mean, a lot of murders are, I think it's like 90% of murders are like someone you know. So
Yeah.
those can solve, but like I don't know, and like someone like you see it's in their system, it's like open shut case.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't even dive into the fact that like these substances like didn't exist in this form until like pharmaceuticals started to like amp up the dosages and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
But and there's just like there's like as far as like far as it goes, like unless you look like a certain person, like, and you overdose, they're just gonna assume, oh, seems right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, and like, addiction's a weird thing because, like, like, I don't know, it's not like it's on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that somebody gets addicted. Like, addiction is just like a whole different
yeah,
monster to deal with.
yeah.
It's like not. I don't know. Have you ever seen them? Did you ever watch Beautiful Boy?
No,
I thought that was like a really good description of addiction. That's Timothy Chalamet and Steve Carell.
really?
It's really like
That's a weird casting.
yeah, father son. It's a really great depiction of it, but it's probably a movie I'll never watch again.
Okay, that doesn't help.
Yeah, probably not. But I mean, like, it's an incredible. It's one of those watches that's like it's so incredible that I don't think
You don't need to do it again.
no. But I think about that movie for that reason.
Okay.
I think like with Back to Vengeance, like my notch down is that like sometimes I felt like it could have just like been like a little bit. There's like some cliche writing in there, or like it could have like been taken up one more notch. I don't know.
What do you mean by that?
Just like I mean, like of course, like
What do you mean by that?
like of course, like like New York guy comes to Texas, kind of those stereotypes, and then like I wanted like the danger to be just a little bit more amped up. Like looking back, like I get why it wasn't like throughout the movie. I don't know. It's like a double-edged sword because I loved its indie vibes, but also like that feel like it never. I don't know. That was both like a great part and like a disappointing part. If that
I
makes
would
sense.
say I would like to see more indie movies that have an action feel to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or not necessarily action, but yeah, like amping up the edge a little bit. I would like to see that more.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I think at the end of it I appreciate that this one didn't.
Yeah.
Um
I guess like like it was just something I noticed while I was watching it, but now I'm looking back at it and I'm like, oh, well, of course it wasn't amped up. There wasn't a real murderer.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like like it all clicked, and that was a great part of it. It was just
Yeah.
like that was just my one little thing that I noticed.
But I get the like cliche. Like, I at least felt that way like more or less at the beginning, even though I love the John Mayer cameo. You know what I mean? But like the opening of it did kind of throw me off, and I was just like, wait, why the hell would this guy go to? Like this guy would never go to Texas. You know what I mean? Like in real life, if this,
Yeah.
that was my one big throw off at the beginning. But then once it like started, I was like,
Yeah. But
I was like, okay, this is just an interesting story, and I'm just like, how the fuck does he, think of just this story? Like, how, like, I just appreciate these like,
interesting original ideas.
yeah, just completely new takes.
Yeah.
That's I think they blended the podcasting like better
thought
than
so, too.
anybody has done.
And like it
Way
like,
better than Don't Worry, Darling.
No, definitely. And like I love narrative podcasts, so it like rang true with me too.
Yeah.
And like I wish they would have gotten Ira Glass and like were able to use This American Life for like because like that big podcast that called in like they
Yeah.
call it like America Tale or something like that.
That was supposed to be Ira Glass.
Yeah, because they do that. Like
Okay.
S Town and like a few other podcasts that like are like one-off series have premiered their first episode or part of it on a This American Life
Yeah.
episode, and like it goes on to like be huge because like This American Life has such a big like return, and like I found a lot of podcasts that way,
Yeah.
and so then I'm like reevaluating.
No, that's like the podcast thing too. It's like anytime someone starts a podcast, they do the podcast press tour. And
yeah, and they like like this one's cool because like they can like share like the literal first episode.
Yeah.
On it. But it like definitely made me be like, all right, what do I need to think about my podcasting listening? I don't know. It just like made me reevaluate some stuff too.
Yeah.
Because it's like easy to hear stories and like be like, that's a crazy story, and then like be like, oh yeah, but that person's real.
It would have been crazy if we watched this movie last week with the Abbott
Yeah,
podcasting episode. Or maybe that wasn't last week, but
might have been 2 weeks ago.
yeah.
It made me think of the Abbott podcasting episode.
Yeah. Because that was kind of, Jacob's thing.
It
too.
made me think of Jacob a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought
What if Jacob played this role?
could have. He could have.
I saw